Adelaide is the capital city of South Australia and the fifth largest city in Australia. As of June 2013, Adelaide had an estimated resident population of 1.29 million. The demonym Adelaidean is used in reference to the city and its residents. Adelaide is north of the Fleurieu Peninsula, on the Adelaide Plains between the Gulf St Vincent and the low-lying Mount Lofty ranges which surround the city. Adelaide stretches 20 km from the coast to the foothills, and 90 km from Gawler at its northern extent to Sellicks Beach in the south. Named in honour of Adelaide of Saxe-Meiningen, Queen Consort to King William IV, the city was founded in 1836 as the planned capital for a freely settled British province in Australia. Colonel William Light, one of Adelaide's founding fathers, designed the city and chose its location close to the River Torrens, in the area originally inhabited by the Kaurna people. Light's designs set out Adelaide in a grid layout, interspaced by wide boulevards and large public squares, and entirely surrounded by parklands. Early Adelaide was shaped by religious freedom and a commitment to political progressivism and civil liberties, which led to the moniker City of Churches. As South Australia's seat of government and commercial centre, Adelaide is the site of many governmental and financial institutions. Most of these are concentrated in the city centre along the cultural boulevard of North Terrace, King William Street and in various districts of the metropolitan area. Today, Adelaide is noted for its many festivals and sporting events, its food and wine, its long beach fronts, and its large defence and manufacturing sectors. It ranks highly in terms of livability, being listed in the top 10 of The Economist's World's Most Livable Cities Index in 2010, 2011 and 2012. It was also ranked the most livable city in Australia by the Property Council of Australia in 2011, 2012 and again in 2013. History. Before European settlement, prior to its proclamation as a British settlement in 1836, the area around Adelaide was inhabited by the indigenous Kaurna Aboriginal nation. 19th century. South Australia was officially proclaimed as a new British colony on December 28, 1836, near the old gum tree in what is now the suburb of Glenelg North. The event is commemorated in South Australia as Proclamation Day. The site of the colony's capital was surveyed and laid out by Colonel William Light, the first Surveyor-General of South Australia, through the design made by the architect George Strickland Kingston. In 1823, Light had fondly written of the Sicilian city of Catania, the two principal streets cross each other at right angles in the square in the direction of north and south and east and west. They are wide and spacious and about a mile long, and this became the basis for the plan of Adelaide. Light chose, not without opposition, a site on rising ground close to the River Torrens, which was the chief water supply for the fledgling colony. Light's vision, as it has been termed, has meant that the initial design of Adelaide required little modification as the settlement grew and prospered. Adelaide was established as a planned colony of free immigrants, promising civil liberties and freedom from religious persecution, based upon the ideas of Edward Gibbon Wakefield. Wakefield had read accounts of Australian settlement while in prison in London for attempting to abduct an heiress, and realised that the eastern colonies suffered from a lack of available labour, due to the practice of giving land grants to all arrivals. Wakefield's idea was for the government to survey and sell the land at a rate that would maintain land values high enough to be unaffordable for labourers and journeymen. Funds raised from the sale of land were to be used to bring out working-class emigrants, who would have to work hard for the moneyed settlers to ever afford their own land. As a result of this policy, Adelaide does not share the convict settlement history of other Australian cities like Sydney, New South Wales, Brisbane, Queensland, and Hobart, Tasmania. As it was believed that in a colony of free settlers there would be little crime, no provision was made for a jail in Colonel Light's 1837 plan. However, by mid-1837 the South Australian Register was warning of escaped convicts from New South Wales, and tenders for a temporary jail were sought. Following a burglary, a murder, and two attempted murders in Adelaide during March 1838, Governor Hindmarsh created the South Australian Police Force in April 1838 under 21-year-old Henry Inman. The first sheriff, Mr. Samuel Smart, was wounded during a robbery, and on May 2, 1838 one of the offenders, Michael Magee, became the first person to be hanged in South Australia. William Baker Ashton was appointed governor of the temporary jail in 1839, and in 1840 George Strickland Kingston was commissioned to design Adelaide's new jail. Construction of Adelaide Jail commenced in 1841. Adelaide's early history was wrought by economic uncertainty and incompetent leadership. The first governor of South Australia, John Hindmarsh, clashed frequently with others, in particular the resident commissioner, James Hertel Fisher. The rural area surrounding Adelaide was surveyed by Light in preparation to sell a total of over 405 km2 of land. Adelaide's early economy started to get on its feet in 1838 with the arrival of livestock from New South Wales and Tasmania. Wool production provided an early basis for the South Australian economy. Light's survey was completed in this period and land was promptly offered for sale to early colonists. By 1860, wheat farms had been established from Encounter Bay in the south to Clare in the north. Governor Gawler took over from Hindmarsh in late 1838 and, despite being under orders from the Select Committee on South Australia in Britain not to undertake any public works, promptly oversaw construction of a governor's house, the Adelaide Jail, police barracks, a hospital, a customs house and a wharf at Port Adelaide. In addition, houses for public officials and missionaries and outstations for police and surveyors were also constructed during Gawler's governorship. Adelaide had also become economically self-sufficient during this period, but at heavy cost. As a result of Gawler's public works the colony was heavily in debt and relied on bailouts from London to stay afloat. Gawler was recalled and replaced by Governor Grey in 1841. Grey slashed public expenditure against heavy opposition. Although its impact was negligible at this point, silver was discovered in Glen Osmond that year, agriculture was well underway, and other mines sprung up all over the state, aiding Adelaide's commercial development. The city exported meat, wool, wine, fruit and wheat by the time Grey left in 1845, contrasting with a low point in 1842 when one-third of Adelaide houses were abandoned. Trade links with the rest of the Australian states were established with the Murray River being successfully navigated in 1853 by Francis Cadell, an Adelaide resident. South Australia became a self-governing colony in 1856 with the ratification of a new constitution by the British Parliament. Secret ballots were introduced, and a bicameral parliament was elected on March 9, 1857, by which time 109,917 people lived in the province. In 1860 the Thorndon Park Reservoir was opened, finally providing an alternative water source to the now turbid River Torrens. Gas street lighting was implemented in 1867, the University of Adelaide was founded in 1874, the South Australian Art Gallery opened in 1881 and the Happy Valley Reservoir opened in 1896. In the 1890s Australia was affected by a severe economic depression, ending a hectic era of land booms and tumultuous expansionism. Financial institutions in Melbourne and banks in Sydney closed. The national fertility rate fell and immigration was reduced to a trickle. The value of South Australia's exports nearly halved. Drought and poor harvests from 1884 compounded the problems, with some families leaving for Western Australia. Adelaide was not as badly hit as the larger gold rush cities of Sydney and Melbourne, and silver and lead discoveries at Broken Hill provided some relief. Only 1 year of deficit was recorded, but the price paid was retrenchments and lean public spending. Wine and copper were the only industries not to suffer a downturn. 20th century. Electric street lighting was introduced in 1900 and electric trams were transporting passengers in 1909. 28,000 men were sent to fight in World War I. Adelaide enjoyed a post-war boom but, with the return of droughts, endured the Great Depression of the 1930s, later returning to prosperity under strong government leadership. Secondary industries helped reduce the state's dependence on primary industries. World War II brought industrial stimulus and diversification to Adelaide under the Playford government, which advocated Adelaide as a safe place for manufacturing due to its less vulnerable location. 70,000 men and women enlisted and shipbuilding was expanded at the nearby port of Gawler. The South Australian government in this period built on former wartime manufacturing industries. International manufacturers like General Motors, Holden and Chrysler made use of these factories around Adelaide, completing its transformation from an agricultural service centre to a 20th-century city. A pipeline from Mannum brought River Murray water to Adelaide in 1954 and an airport opened at West Beach in 1955. An assisted migration scheme brought 215,000 immigrants of many nationalities, mainly European, to South Australia between 1947 and 1973. Flinders University and the Flinders Medical Centre were established in the 1960s at Bedford Park, south of the city. The Dunstan governments of the 1970s saw something of an Adelaide cultural revival, establishing a wide array of social reforms and overseeing the city becoming a centre of the arts, building upon the biennial Adelaide Festival of Arts, which commenced in 1960. Adelaide hosted the Formula One Australian Grand Prix between 1985 and 1996 on a street circuit in the city's East Parklands. It then moved to Melbourne in 1996. The 1991 State Bank collapsed during the then economic recession. Its effects lasted until 2004, when ratings agency Standard & Poor's reinstated South Australia's AAA credit rating. Recent years have seen the Clipsal 500 V8 supercars race make use of sections of the former Formula One circuit. Adelaide's tallest building, built in 1988, was formerly known as the State Bank Building until 1991, then renamed the Santos Building until 2006 and is now known as Westpac House. Geography. Adelaide is north of the Fleurieu Peninsula, on the Adelaide Plains between the Gulf St Vincent and the low-lying Mount Lofty ranges. The city stretches 20 km from the coast to the foothills, and 90 km from Gawler at its northern extent to Sellicks Beach in the south. According to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, the Adelaide metropolitan region has a total land area of 870 km2, and is at an average elevation of 50 metres above sea level. Mount Lofty, east of the Adelaide metropolitan region in the Adelaide Hills at an elevation of 727 metres, is the tallest point of the city and in the state south of Borough. Much of Adelaide was bushland before British settlement, with some variation. Sandhills, swamps and marshlands were prevalent around the coast. The loss of the sandhills to urban development had a particularly destructive effect on the coastline due to erosion. Where practical, the government has implemented programs to rebuild and vegetate sandhills at several of Adelaide's beachside suburbs. Much of the original vegetation has been cleared, with what is left to be found in reserves such as the Cleland Conservation Park and Belay National Park. A number of creeks and rivers flow through the Adelaide region. The largest are the Torrens and Onkaparinga catchments. Adelaide relies on its many reservoirs for water supply, with the Happy Valley Reservoir supplying around 40% and the much larger Mount Bold Reservoir 10% of Adelaide's domestic requirements respectively. On March 1, 1954 at 3:40 am Adelaide experienced its largest recorded earthquake to date, with the epicenter 12 km from the city centre at Darlington, and a reported magnitude of 5.6. There were smaller, but still noticeable, earthquakes in 2010, 2011 and 2014. Urban layout. Adelaide is a planned city, designed by the first Surveyor-General of South Australia, Colonel William Light. His plan, now known as Light's Vision, arranged Adelaide in a grid, with 5 squares in the Adelaide city centre and a ring of parks, known as the Adelaide Parklands, surrounding it. Light's design was initially unpopular with the early settlers, as well as South Australia's first governor, John Hindmarsh. Light persisted with his design against this initial opposition. The benefits of Light's design are numerous. Adelaide has had wide multi-lane roads from its beginning, an easily navigable grid layout and a beautiful green ring around the city centre. There are 2 sets of ring roads in Adelaide that have resulted from the original design. The inner ring route borders the parklands, and the outer route completely bypasses the inner city via Grand Junction Road, Hampstead Road, Ascot Avenue, Portrush Road, Cross Road and South Road. Suburban expansion has to some extent outgrown Light's original plan. Numerous former outlying villages and country towns, as well as the satellite city of Elizabeth, have been enveloped by its suburban sprawl. Expanding developments in the Adelaide Hills region led to the construction of the Southeastern Freeway to cope with growth, which has subsequently led to new developments and further improvements to that transport corridor. Similarly, the booming development in Adelaide South led to the construction of the Southern Expressway. New roads are not the only transport infrastructure developed to cope with the urban growth. The Oban Busway is an example of a unique solution to Tea Tree Gully's transport woes in the 1980s. The development of the nearby suburb of Golden Grove in the late 1980s is an example of well-thought-out urban planning. The newer suburban areas as a whole, however, are not as integrated into the urban layout as much as older areas, and therefore place more stress on Adelaide's transportation system although not on a level comparable with Melbourne or Sydney. In the 1960s, a Metropolitan Adelaide Transport Study Plan was proposed in order to cater for the future growth of the city. The plan involved the construction of freeways, expressways and the upgrade of certain aspects of the public transport system. The then Premier Steele Hall approved many parts of the plan and the government went as far as purchasing land for the project. The later Labour government elected under Don Dunstan shelved the plan, but allowed the purchased land to remain vacant, should the future need for freeways arise. In 1980, the Liberal Party won government and Premier David Tonkin committed his government to selling off the land acquired for the MATS plan, ensuring that even when needs changed, the construction of most MATS proposed freeways would be impractical. Some parts of this land have been used for transport while most has been progressively subdivided for residential use. In 2008, the SA government announced plans for a network of transport-oriented developments across the Adelaide metropolitan area and purchased a 10-hectare industrial site at Bowden for $52.5 a million as the first of these developments. Housing. Historically, Adelaide's suburban residential areas have been characterised by single-storey detached houses built on quarter-acre blocks. A relative lack of suitable locally available timber for construction purposes led to the early development of a brick-making industry, as well as the use of stone, for houses and other buildings. There is a wide variety in the styles of these predominantly brick, and to a lesser degree, stone, and/or stone-faced, single-storey detached houses. After both of the World Wars, the use of red bricks were popular. In the 1960s, cream bricks were popular. In the 1970s, deep red and brown bricks were popular. Until the 1970s, roofs tended to be clad with corrugated iron or clay tiles. Since then, cement tiles and color-bond corrugated iron have also become popular. Most roofs are pitched. Flat roofs are not common. Up to the 1970s, the majority of houses were of double brick construction upon dwarf wall foundations. Progressively since then there has been a move to brick veneer over a timber frame on a concrete slab foundation, and more recently, over a steel frame. In addition to the above, a significant factor in Adelaide's suburban history is the role of the South Australian Housing Trust. In the 1960s and 1970s, many of the older houses were demolished and replaced by home units, a group of 3 to 5 single-storey dwellings on a common title with shared access. 2-storey blocks of flats were also common in this period. In the 21st century, a significant factor is the government policy of urban infill, where single-storey detached houses are being demolished, the land subdivided, and double-storey semi-detached townhouses are being built in their place. Climate. Adelaide is a hot summer Mediterranean climate, with hot dry summers and mild winters, with most precipitation falling in the winter months. Adelaide receives enough annual precipitation to avoid CAR paragraph PPEN's BSH classification. Rainfall is unreliable, light and infrequent throughout summer. In contrast, the winter has fairly reliable rainfall, with June being the wettest month of the year, averaging around 80 mm. Frosts are occasional, with the most notable occurrences in July 1908 and July 1982. Hail is also common in winter. Snowfall in the metropolitan area is uncommon, except for very light falls at Mount Lofty and some places in the Adelaide Hills, with the most recent occurrence being in July 2013. Governance. Adelaide, as the capital of South Australia, is the seat of the Government of South Australia. As Adelaide is South Australia's capital and most populous city, the state government cooperates extensively with the City of Adelaide. In 2006, the Ministry for the City of Adelaide was created to facilitate the state government's collaboration with the Adelaide City Council and the Lord Mayor to improve Adelaide's image. The State Parliament's Capital City Committee is also involved in the governance of the City of Adelaide, being primarily concerned with the planning of Adelaide's urban development and growth. Local governments. The Adelaide metropolitan area is divided between 18 local government areas, including, at its centre, the City of Adelaide, which administers the Adelaide City Centre, North Adelaide, and the surrounding Adelaide parklands. It is the oldest municipal authority in Australia and was established in 1840, when Adelaide and Australia's first mayor, James Hertel Fisher, was elected. From 1919 onwards, the city has had a Lord Mayor, the current being Lord Mayor Stephen Yarwood. Demography. At the 2011 census, Adelaide had a metropolitan population of more than 1,225,235, making it Australia's fifth largest city. In the 2002-03 period the population grew by 0.6%, while the national average was 1.2%. Some 76.7% of the population of South Australia are residents of the Adelaide metropolitan area, making South Australia one of the most centralised states. Major areas of population growth in recent years have been in outer suburbs such as Mawson Lakes and Golden Grove. Adelaide's inhabitants occupy 366,912 houses, 57,695 semi-detached, row terrace or townhouses and 49,413 flats, units or apartments. High socio-economic suburbs include coastal suburbs of Seacliff, Brighton, Henley Beach and Tennyson. Inner northern suburbs of North Adelaide, Medindie, Fitzroy, Prospect and Walkerville. Eastern suburbs of St Peters, Burnside, Stonefell, Rostrevor, Chorak and Skye. Inner southern suburbs of Unley Park, Goodwood, Hyde Park, Hawthorn, Beelair and Springfield. About 1/6 of the population had university qualifications. The number of Adelaideans with vocational qualifications fell from 62.1% of the labour force in the 1991 census to 52.4% in the 2001 census. Overseas-born Adelaideans compose 29.8% of the total population. Suburbs including Newton, Payneham and Campbelltown in the east and Torrensville, West Lakes and Fulham to the west, have large Greek and Italian communities. The Italian consulate is located in the eastern suburb of Payneham. Large Vietnamese populations are settled in the northwestern suburbs of Woodville, Kilkenny, Pennington, Mansfield Park and Athol Park and also Parafield Gardens and Poraka in Adelaide's north. Migrants from India and Sri Lanka have settled into inner suburban areas of Adelaide including the inner northern suburbs of Blair Athol, Kilburn and Enfield and the inner southern suburbs of Plympton, Parkholme and Carrollton Park. Suburbs such as Para Hills, Salisbury, Ingle Farm and Blair Athol in the north and Findon, West Croydon and Seaton in the west are experiencing large migration from Afghanistan and Iran. Chinese migrants favour settling in the eastern and northeastern suburbs including Kensington Gardens, Greenacres, Modbury and Golden Grove. Mawson Lakes has a large international student population, due to its proximity to the University of South Australia campus. The 5 largest groups of overseas-born were from England, Italy, India, China and Vietnam. The most spoken languages other than English were Italian, Greek, Mandarin, Vietnamese, and Cantonese. Religion. Adelaide was founded on a vision of religious tolerance which attracted a wide variety of religious practitioners. This led to it being known as the City of Churches. However, approximately 28% of the population expressed no religious affiliation in the 2011 census, compared with the national average of 22.3%, making Adelaide one of the least religious cities in Australia. Over half of the population of Adelaide identifies as Christian, with the largest denominations being Catholic, Anglican, Uniting Church and Eastern Orthodox. Jewish community. The Jewish community of the city dates back to 1840. 8 years later, 58 Jews lived in the city. The Jewish synagogue was built in 1871, when 435 Jews lived in the city. Many Jews took part in the city councils, such as Judah Mos Solomon and others after him. 3 Jews have been elected to the position of city mayor. In the 1960s, the Jewish population of Adelaide numbered about 1,200. In 2001, according to the Australian census, 979 persons declared themselves to be Jewish by religion. In 2011, over 1,000 Jews were living in the city, operating an Orthodox and a Reform school, in addition to a virtual Jewish museum. The Adelaide Mosque. The Afghan community in Australia first became established in the 1860s when camels and their Pathan, Punjabi, Baluchi and Sindhi handlers began to be used to open up settlement in the arid interior of the continent. Until eventually superseded by the advent of the railways and later, motor vehicles, he played an invaluable economic and social role in transporting heavy loads of goods to, and products from, isolated settlements and mines. This role is acknowledged by the name of the GAN, the passenger train operating between Adelaide, Alice Springs, and Darwin. The Central Adelaide Mosque is regarded as the oldest permanent mosque in Australia. However, an earlier mosque at Murray in northern South Australia, dating from 1861 62 and subsequently abandoned or demolished, has now been rebuilt. Age structure. Adelaide is ageing more rapidly than other Australian capital cities. More than a quarter of Adelaide's population is aged 55 years or older, in comparison to the national average of 25.6%. Adelaide has the lowest number of children, who comprised 17.7% of the population, compared to the national average of 19.3%. Economy. South Australia's largest employment sector is healthcare and social assistance, surpassing manufacturing in SA as the largest employer since 2006 €07. In 2009 €10, manufacturing in SA had average annual employment of 83,700 persons compared with 103,300 for healthcare and social assistance. Healthcare and social assistance represented nearly 13% of the state average annual employment. The retail trade is the second largest employer in SA, with 91,900 jobs, and 12% of the state workforce. Manufacturing, defense technology, high-tech electronic systems and research, commodity export and corresponding service industries all play a role in the SA economy. Almost half of all cars produced in Australia are made in Adelaide at the General Motors Holden plant in Elizabeth. Adelaide has over 40% of Australia's high-tech electronics industry, which designs and produces electronic systems that are sold worldwide for applications in medical, communications, defense, automotive, food and wine processing and industrial sectors. The revenue of Adelaide's electronics industry has grown at about 15% per annum since 1990, and in 2011 exceeds $4 billion Australian dollars. The electronics industry in Adelaide employs over 12,000 people, or 14% of all manufacturing employment. The South Australian economy, very closely tied to Adelaide's, still enjoys a trade surplus and has higher per capita growth than Australia as a whole. The collapse of the state bank in 1992 resulted in large levels of state public debt. The collapse meant that successive governments enacted lean budgets, cutting spending, which was a setback to the further economic development of the city and state. The debt has more recently been reduced, with the state government once again receiving a AAA+ credit rating. The global media conglomerate News Corporation was founded in, and until 2004 incorporated in, Adelaide, and it is still considered its spiritual home by Rupert Murdoch. Australia's largest oil company, Santos, prominent South Australian brewery, Coopers, major national retailer Harris Scarfe, and Australia's second largest listed investment company Argo Investments Limited also call Adelaide their home. Defence industry. Adelaide is home to a large proportion of Australia's defence industries, which contribute over $1 a billion to South Australia's gross state product. 72% of Australian defence companies are in Adelaide. the principal government military research institution, the Defence Science and Technology Organisation, and other defence technology organisations such as BAE Systems Australia and Lockheed Martin Australia, are north of Salisbury and west of Elizabeth in an area now called Edinburgh Parks, adjacent to RAAF Base Edinburgh. Others, such as Saab Systems and Raytheon, are in or near Technology Park. ASC Proprietary Limited, based in the industrial suburb of Osborne, South Australia, was charged with constructing Australia's Collins-class submarines and more recently the $6 Australian a billion contract to construct the Royal Australian Navy's new air warfare destroyers. Employment statistics: there are 466,829 employed people in Adelaide, with 62.3% full-time and 35.1% part-time. In recent years there has been a growing trend towards part-time employment, increasing from 11.6% of the workplace in 1991, to over a third in 2011. The median weekly individual income for people aged 15 years and over was $447 per week in 2006, compared with $466 nationally. The median family income was $1,137 per week, compared with $1,171 nationally. Adelaide's housing and living costs are substantially lower than that of other Australian cities, with housing being notably cheaper. The median Adelaide house price is half that of Sydney and two-thirds that of Melbourne. The three-month trend unemployment rate to March 2007 was 6.2%. The northern suburbs' unemployment rate is disproportionately higher than the other regions of Adelaide at 8.3%. While the east and south are lower than the Adelaide average at 4.9% and 5.0% respectively. House prices: over the decade March 2001 a March 2010, metropolitan Adelaide median house prices approximately tripled. In the 5 years March 2007 a March 2012, prices increased by approximately 27% a approximately 5% PA. Compounding. In summary, all numbers approximate and rounded. Since March 2012, the REISA no longer release a median house price for the Adelaide metropolitan area. Each quarter, the Real Estate Institute of South Australia publishes a list of median house sale prices by suburb and local government area. Due to the small size of many of Adelaide's suburbs, the low volumes of sales in these suburbs, and the huge variations in the numbers of sales in a suburb in a quarter, statistical analysis of the most expensive suburb is unreliable. The suburbs appearing in the top 10 most expensive suburbs this quarter list is constantly varying. Quarterly reports for the last 2 years can be found on the REISA website. Education and research. Education forms an increasingly important part of the city's economy, with the South Australian government and educational institutions attempting to position Adelaide as Australia's education hub, and marketing it as a learning city. The number of international students studying in Adelaide has increased rapidly in recent years to 23,300 in 2008, of which 2,380 were secondary school students. In addition to the city's existing institutions, foreign institutions have been attracted to set up campuses in order to increase its attractiveness as an education hub. Primary and secondary education. At the level of primary and secondary education, there are two systems of school education. There is a public system operated by the South Australian government and a private system of independent and Catholic schools. All schools provide education under the South Australian Certificate of Education or, to a lesser extent, the International Baccalaureate, with Adelaide having the highest number of IB schools in Australia. Tertiary education. There are 3 public universities local to Adelaide, as well as 1 private university and 3 constituent colleges of foreign universities. The Flinders University of South Australia, the University of Adelaide, the University of South Australia and Torrens University Australia part of the Laureate International Universities are based in Adelaide. Flinders, University of Adelaide and University of South Australia were ranked within the world's top 400 universities in the Times Higher Education magazine in 2007. Torrens University Australia is part of an international network of over 70 higher education institutions in more than 30 countries worldwide. The historic Torrens building in Victoria Square houses Carnegie Mellon University's Hines College Australia, Cranfield University's Defence College of Management and Technology, and University College London's School of Energy and Resources, and constitute the city's international university precinct. The University of Adelaide, with 25,000 students, is Australia's third oldest university and a member of the leading group of 8. It has 5 campuses throughout the state, including 2 in the city centre, and a campus in Singapore. The University of South Australia, with 37,000 students, has 2 North Terrace campuses, 3 other campuses in the metropolitan area and campuses at Gawler and Mount Gambier. The Flinders University of South Australia, with 21,809 students, is in the southern suburb of Bedford Park, alongside the Flinders Medical Centre, and maintains a small city campus in Victoria Square. There are several South Australian TAFE campuses in the metropolitan area which provide a range of vocational education and training. The Adelaide College of the Arts, as a school of TAFESA, provides nationally recognised training in visual and performing arts. Research. In addition to the universities, Adelaide is home to a number of research institutes, including the Royal Institution of Australia, established in 2009 as a counterpart to the 200-year-old Royal Institution of Great Britain. Many of the organisations involved in research tend to be geographically clustered throughout the Adelaide metropolitan area, the East End of North Terrace, IMVS. Hanson Institute. RAH. National Wine Centre. The Waite Research Precinct, ๊ɛdəleɪd Head Office and Plant Research Centre. AWRI. ACPFG. CSIRO Research Laboratories. ๊ɛdəleɪd also have establishments at Glenside and West Beach. Edinburgh, South Australia, DSTO. BAE Systems. Lockheed Martin Australia Electronic Systems. Technology Park, BAE Systems. Optus. Raytheon. Topson. Lockheed Martin Australia Electronic Systems. Research Park at Thebarton, businesses involved in materials engineering, biotechnology, environmental services, information technology, industrial design, laser optics technology, health products, engineering services, radar systems, telecommunications and petroleum services. Science Park, Playford Capital. Cultural. While established as a British province, and very much English in terms of its culture, Adelaide attracted immigrants from other parts of Europe early on, including German and other European nonconformists escaping religious persecution. The first German Lutherans arrived in 1838 bringing with them the vine cuttings that they used to found the acclaimed wineries of the Barossa Valley. After the Second World War, British, Italian, Greek, Dutch, Polish and other European immigrants settled in Adelaide. The conclusion of the Vietnam War in 1975 saw an influx of Indo-Chinese immigrants to Adelaide. C. Immigration history of Australia, arts and entertainment. Adelaide's arts scene flourished in the 1960s and 1970s with the support of successive premiers from both major political parties. The renowned Adelaide Festival of Arts and Fringe Festival were established in 1960 under Thomas Playford. Construction of the Adelaide Festival Centre began under Steele Hall in 1970 and was completed under the subsequent government of Don Dunstan, who also established the South Australian Film Corporation and, in 1976, the State Opera of South Australia. Over time, the Adelaide Festival has expanded to include the Adelaide Cabaret Festival, Adelaide Film Festival, Adelaide Festival of Ideas, Adelaide Writers' Week, and ๊ɛdəleɪd, all held predominantly in the autumnal month of March. Other festivals include Feast, Tasting Australia, and the Royal Adelaide Show. There are many international cultural fairs, most notably the German Schwanenquarterzenfest and Greek Glendy. Adelaide is home to the Adelaide Christmas Pageant, the world's largest Christmas parade. As the state capital, Adelaide is home to a great number of cultural institutions with many along the boulevard of North Terrace. The Art Gallery of South Australia, with around 35,000 works, holds Australia's second-largest state-based collection. Adjacent are the South Australian Museum and State Library of South Australia, while the Adelaide Botanic Garden, National Wine Centre and Tandania National Aboriginal Cultural Institute are nearby in the east end of the city. In the back of the State Library lies the Migration Museum, Australia's oldest museum of its kind. Contemporary art scenes include the Contemporary Arts Centre of South Australia. Adelaide Festival Centre, on the banks of the Torrens, is the focal point for much of the cultural activity in the city and home to the State Theatre Company of South Australia, with other venues including the Adelaide Entertainment Centre and the city's many smaller theatres, pubs and cabaret bars. The music of Adelaide has produced musical groups and individuals who have achieved national and international fame. This includes the Adelaide Symphony Orchestra, the Adelaide Youth Orchestra, rock bands The Angels, Cold Chisel, the Super Jesus, Wolf and Cub, roots blues group The Audreys, internationally acclaimed metal acts I Killed a Prom Queen and Double Dragon, popular Australian hip-hop outfit Hilltop Hoods, pop acts like Syar, Orianthe, Guy Sebastian, and Wheeze Car, as well as internationally successful tribute act, the Australian Pink Floyd Show. Noted rocker Jimmy Barnes spent most of his youth in the northern suburb of Elizabeth. Paul Kelly grew up in Adelaide and was head prefect at Rostrevor College. The first Australian Idol winner, Guy Sebastian, hails from the northeastern suburb of Golden Grove. American musician Ben Folds used to base himself in Adelaide when he was married to Australian Farley Hines. Folds recorded a song about Adelaide before he moved away. In addition to its own ʻædəleɪd, Adelaide attracts several touring music festivals, including Big Day Out, Creamfields, Future Music, Laneway, Parklife, Soundwave, Stereosonic and Summer Daisy. Adelaide Plains hosted two of Australia's leading contemporary dance companies. The Australian Dance Theatre and Lee Warren and dancers contribute to state festivals and perform nationally and internationally. Restless Dance Theatre is also based in Adelaide and is nationally recognised for working with disabled and non-disabled dancers to use movement as a means of expression. Concert venues. Adelaide pop concert venues include Adelaide Entertainment Centre, Adelaide Festival Theatre, Adelaide Oval, Apollo Stadium, Memorial Drive Park, the Barton Theatre. Other concert and live theatre venues include Adelaide Town Hall, Dunstan Playhouse, Her Majesty's Theatre. Media. Newspapers. Newspapers in Adelaide are dominated by News Corporation publications, Adelaide being the birthplace of News Corporation itself. The only South Australian daily newspaper is The Advertiser, published by News Corporation 6 days a week. The same group publishes a Sunday paper, The Sunday Mail. There are 11 suburban community newspapers published weekly, known collectively as the Messenger newspapers, also published by a subsidiary of News Corporation. The Independent Weekly was a small independent newspaper providing an alternative view, but abolished its print edition in November 2010 and now exists as a digital daily newsletter only. Two national daily newspapers are circulated in the city, The Australian and its weekend publication, The Weekend Australian, also published by News Corporation, and the Australian Financial Review published by Fairfax. Interstate dailies, The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald, published by Fairfax, are also typically available. The Adelaide Review is a free paper published fortnightly, and other independent magazine-style papers are published, but are not as widely available. Television. All of the 5 Australian national television networks broadcast high-definition digital services in Adelaide. They share 3 transmission towers on the ridge near the summit of Mount Lofty. 2 other transmission sites are located at Grenfell Street and Elizabeth Downs. The 2 government-funded stations are run by the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and the Special Broadcasting Service. The 7 Network and Network 10 both own their Adelaide stations. Adelaide's NWS9 is part of the 9 network. New digital-only channels available in addition to ABC 1, 7, 9, 10 and SBS 1 include 1HD, 11, ABC 2, ABC 3, ABC News 24, SBS 2, 7 mate, GEMHD and GO. Adelaide also has a community television station, 44 Adelaide. The Foxtel Pay TV service is available as cable television in a few areas, and as satellite television to the entire metropolitan area. It is resold by a number of other brands, mostly telephone companies. As part of a nationwide phase-out of analogue television in Australia, Adelaide's analogue television service was shut down on April 2, 2013. Radio. There are 20 radio stations that serve the metropolitan area, as well as 4 community stations that serve only parts of the metropolitan area. Of the 20 full-coverage stations, there are 6 commercial stations, 6 community stations, 6 national stations and 2 narrowcast stations. A complete list can be found at List of radio stations in Australia. Adelaide. Icons. Sport. The main sports played professionally in Adelaide are Australian rules football, association football, cricket, netball and basketball. Adelaide is the home of 2 Australian Football League teams, the Adelaide Crows and the Port Adelaide Football Club, and 1 A-League soccer team, Adelaide United. A local Australian rules football league, the SANFL, is made up of 10 teams from around Adelaide. The SANFL has been in operation since 1877 when it began as the South Australian Football Association before changing its name to the SANFL in 1907. The SANFL is the oldest surviving football league of any code played in Australia. Adelaide has developed a strong culture of attracting crowds to major sporting events. Until the completion of the 2012 to 2014 renovation and upgrade of the Adelaide Oval, most large sporting events took place at either AAMI Stadium, or the historic Adelaide Oval, home of the Southern Redbacks and the Adelaide Strikers cricket teams. Since completion of the upgrade, home games for Adelaide Crows and Port Adelaide Power now take place at Adelaide Oval. Since 1884, Adelaide Oval has also hosted an international cricket test every summer, along with a number of one-day international cricket matches. Memorial Drive Park, adjacent to the Adelaide Oval, used to host Davis Cup and other major tennis events, including the Adelaide International. Adelaide's professional association football team, Adelaide United, play in the A-League. Founded in 2003, their home ground is Hindmarsh Stadium, which has a capacity of 17,000 and is one of the few purpose-built soccer stadia in Australia. For 2 years, 1997 and 1998, Adelaide was represented in Australia's top-level rugby league, after the New South Wales Rugby League had played a single game per season at the Adelaide Oval starting in 1991. The Adelaide Rams were formed and played in the Breakaway Super League competition in 1997 before moving to the new National Rugby League in 1998. Initially playing at the Adelaide Oval, the club moved to Hindmarsh Stadium late in the 1998 season. As part of a deal with the NRL, the club's owners News Limited closed the club only weeks before the start of the 1999 season. In 2008 the Cronulla Sutherland Sharks, a Sydney NRL club, and the South Australian government announced a 3-year contract in which the Sharks would play a single home game each season at Hindmarsh. Unfortunately this only happened for 2009. From 2010 the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs signed an agreement to play 1 home game per season at the Adelaide Oval for 3 years with the hope of establishing a strong supporter base in Adelaide. Adelaide has 2 professional basketball teams, the men's team being the Adelaide 36ers who play in the NBL and the women's team, the Adelaide Lightning who play in the WNBL. Both teams play their home games at the Adelaide Arena. Adelaide has a professional netball team, the Adelaide Thunderbirds, who play in the Trans-Tasman Netball Competition, the ANZ Championship, with home games played at ETSA Park. The Thunderbirds occasionally play games or finals at the Adelaide Entertainment Centre, while international netball matches are usually played at either the Entertainment Centre or the Adelaide Arena. Since 1999 Adelaide and its surrounding areas has hosted the Tour Down Under bicycle race, organised and directed by Adelaide-based Mike Turtler. Turtle won an Olympic gold medal for Australia in the 4,000 m team pursuit at the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics. The Tour Down Under is the largest cycling event outside Europe and was the first event outside Europe to be granted UCI Pro Tour status. Adelaide maintains a franchise in the Australian Baseball League, the ๊ædəleɪd. They have been playing since 2009, and their home stadium is Cooper's Stadium. Their name stems from the local Great Australian Bight, and from the abundance of local great white sharks. Adelaide also has an ice hockey team, Adelaide Adrenaline in the Australian Ice Hockey League. They were national champions in 2009. The Australian Grand Prix for Formula One racing was hosted by Adelaide from 1985 to 1995 on the Adelaide Street Circuit, which was laid out in the city's eastern parklands. The Grand Prix became a source of pride, and losing the event to Melbourne in a surprise announcement in mid-1993 left a void that has since been filled with the highly successful Clipsal 500 for V8 supercar racing, held on a modified version of the same street circuit. The Classic Adelaide, a rally of classic sporting vehicles, is also held in the city and its surrounds. The World Solar Challenge race attracts teams from around the world, most of which are fielded by universities or corporations, although some are fielded by high schools. The race has a 20-year history spanning 9 races, with the inaugural event taking place in 1987. Adelaide hosted the 2012 World Bowls Championships at Lockleys Bowling Club, becoming the 3rd city in the world to have held the championships twice, having previously hosted the event in 1996. Infrastructure, health. Adelaide's first hospital is the Royal Adelaide Hospital. Founded in 1840, it is one of the major hospitals in Adelaide and is a teaching hospital of the University of Adelaide. It has a capacity of 705 beds. 2 other RAH campuses which specialise in specific patient services are in the suburbs of Adelaide, the Hampstead Rehabilitation Centre in Northfield, and the Glenside Campus Mental Health Service. 4 other large hospitals in the Adelaide area are the Women's and Children's Hospital, which is on King William Road in North Adelaide. The Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Woodville, the Flinders Medical Centre, in Bedford Park and in the northern suburbs, and the Liel McEwen Hospital in Elizabeth. These hospitals are also associated with medical schools. The Women's and Children's, the Queen Elizabeth and the Liel McEwen are affiliated with the University of Adelaide. Flinders Medical Centre is affiliated Flinders University, and the Liel McEwen is also affiliated with the University of South Australia. In June 2007, the state government announced a series of overhauls to the health sector that would see a new hospital constructed on rail yards at the west end of the city, to replace the Royal Adelaide Hospital at the east end of the city. The new 800-bed hospital has a cost of $1.85 billion and was planned to be named the Marjorie Jackson Nelson Hospital after the former governor of South Australia. However, in 2009, at the former governor's request, the state government chose to drop this name and instead transfer the Royal Adelaide Hospital name to the proposed facility. Construction started in June 2011 and is expected to be completed in 2016. In addition, major upgrades were announced to see the Flinders Medical Centre become the primary centre for healthcare for the southern suburbs, and the Liel McEwen Hospital in Elizabeth become the centre for the northern suburbs. The trio of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, the Modbury Hospital and the Noarlunga Hospital were to become specialist elective surgery centres. The Repatriation General Hospital was also to expand its range of specialty areas beyond veterans' health to incorporate stroke, orthopedic rehabilitation and aged care. With the global financial crisis of 2008, it remains to be seen if and how these initiatives will proceed. The largest not-for-profit provider of community healthcare within Adelaide is the Royal District Nursing Service, which provides out-of-hospital care and hospital avoidance care, which in turn eases pressure on the South Australia public hospital system. Transport. Being centrally located on the Australian mainland, Adelaide forms a strategic transport hub for east-west and north-south routes. The city itself is a metropolitan-wide public transport system, which is managed by and known as the Adelaide Metro. The Adelaide Metro consists of a contracted bus system including the Oban Busway, Metropolitan Railways, and the Adelaide Glenelg Tram, which was extended as a metropolitan tram in 2010 through the city centre to the inner northwest suburb of Hindmarsh. There are further plans to extend the tram to Port Adelaide and Semaphore. A CBD tram loop too is being considered, and the latest Adelaide Airport master plan has also revealed a tram extension to the airport in the near future. Road transport in Adelaide has historically been comparatively easier than many of the other Australian cities, with a well-defined city layout and wide multiple-lane roads from the beginning of its development. Historically, Adelaide was known as a 20-minute city, with commuters having been able to travel from metropolitan outskirts to the city proper in roughly 20 minutes. However, these roads are now often considered inadequate to cope with Adelaide's growing road traffic, and often experience traffic congestion. The Adelaide metropolitan area has one freeway and 3 expressways. In order of construction, they are: the Southeastern Freeway connects the southeast corner of the Adelaide Plain to the Adelaide Hills and beyond to Murray Bridge and Tailem Bend, where it then continues as National Highway 1 southeast to Melbourne. The Southern Expressway is an interchangeable one-way road connecting the outer southern suburbs with the inner southern suburbs and the city centre. It duplicates the route of the main South Road, taking the peak traffic load into the city in the morning, and out of the city in the evening. Works commenced in early 2012 to upgrade to a dual-direction expressway and are expected to be completed by mid-2014. The Port River Expressway connects Port Adelaide and Outer Harbour to Port Wakefield Road at the northern entrance to the metropolitan area. The Northern Expressway is the northern suburbs bypass route connecting the Sturt Highway via the Gawler bypass to the Port Wakefield Road at a point a few kilometres north of the Port River Expressway connection. There are plans for major upgrades to busy sections of South Road, including road widening, underpasses and overpasses. The underpass of Anzac Highway was completed in 2009. Further planned underpasses during the first stage of the project include Grange Road, Port Road, the Glenelg tramline and the Outer Harbour Railway line. An overpass between Regency Road and the Port River Expressway commenced construction in 2012. Airports. The Adelaide metropolitan area has 2 commercial airports, Adelaide and Parafield. Adelaide Airport, in Adelaide's western suburbs, serves in excess of 7.0 million passengers annually. The dual international domestic terminal named T1 incorporates glass aero bridges and has the ability to cater for the Airbus A380. The airport is designed to handle 27 aircraft simultaneously and is capable of processing 3,000 passengers per hour. Unusually for a major city, it is only 7 kilometres from the Adelaide city centre. The airport is serviced by 8 international airlines in addition to domestic, regional and charter operators, including AirAsia X, Air New Zealand, Cathay Pacific, Emirates, Jetstar Airways, Malaysia Airlines, Qantas Link, Singapore Airlines, Tiger Airways Australia and Virgin Australia. Adelaide Airport currently has direct international flights servicing Auckland, Denpasar, Dubai, Kuala Lumpur, Hong Kong and Singapore. Batik Air also plan to commence flights in the future. In March 2007, Adelaide Airport was rated the world's second-best airport in the €15 a million passengers category at the Airports Council International 2006 Awards in Dubai. It has also been rated Australia's Capital City Airport of the Year in 2006, 2009 and 2011. Parafield Airport, Adelaide's second airport, 18 kilometres north of the CBD, is used for small aircraft, pilot training and recreational aviation purposes. Utilities. Adelaide's energy requirements were originally met by the Adelaide Electric Supply Company, which was nationalised by the Playford government in 1946, becoming the Electricity Trust of South Australia, now known as SA Power Networks. Despite significant public opposition and the Labour Party's anti-privatisation stance which left the Liberal Party one vote short of the numbers needed to pass the legislation, ETSA was privatised by the Olsen government in 1999 by way of a 200-year lease for the distribution network and the outright purchase of ETSA Power by the Chung Kong Holdings for $3.5 billion after Labour MP Trevor Crothers resigned from the party and voted with the government. The electricity retail market was open to competition in 2003, and although competition was expected to result in lower retail costs, prices increased by 23.7% in the market's first year. In 2004, the privatization was deemed to be a failure, with consumers paying 60% more for their power and with the state government estimated to lose $3 billion in power generation net income in the first 10 years of privatization. In 2012, the industry came under scrutiny for allegedly reducing supply by shutting down generators during periods of peak demand to force prices up. Increased media attention also revealed that in 2009 the state government had approved a 46% increase in retail prices to cover expected increases in the costs of generation, while generation costs had in fact fallen 35% by 2012. These price increases and large subsides have led to South Australia paying the highest retail price for electricity in the world. SA Power Networks now distributes electricity from transmission companies to end users. Privatization led to competition from a variety of companies who now separately provide for the generation, transmission, distribution and retail sales of gas and electricity. Some of the major companies are Trunergy, which generates electricity; Electronet, which transmits electricity from the generators to the distribution network; Lumo Energy; and AGL Energy, which retails gas and electricity. Substantial investment has been made in maintenance and reinforcement of the electricity supply network to provide continued reliability of supply. Adelaide derives most of its electricity from a gas-fired plant operated by AGL Energy at Torrens Island, with more coming from power stations at Port Augusta and Pelican Point, and from connections to the national grid. Gas is mainly supplied from the Moomba gas processing plant in the Cooper Basin, and is piped to Adelaide and other areas within the state. South Australia also generates 18% of its electricity from wind power, and has 51% of the installed capacity of wind generators in Australia. Adelaide's water supply is gained from its reservoirs, Mount Bold, Happy Valley, Maiponga, Millbrook, Hope Valley, Little Parra and South Parra. The yield from these reservoir catchments can be as little as 10% of the city's requirements in drought years and about 60% in average years. The remaining demand is met by the pumping of water from the River Murray. A seawater desalination plant capable of supplying half of Adelaide's water requirements was opened in 2013. The provision of water services is by the government-owned SA Water. See also: Adelaide City Centre, City of Adelaide, Music of Adelaide, South Australian wine, Port Adelaide, lists, images of Adelaide, list of Adelaide parks and gardens, list of Adelaide railway stations, list of Adelaide suburbs, list of Adelaide obsolete suburb names, list of people from Adelaide, list of public art in South Australia, list of public transport routes in Adelaide, list of sports clubs in Adelaide, list of tallest buildings in Adelaide, visitor attractions in South Australia, references. Further reading: Catherine Gargett. Susan Marston, Adelaide, A Brief History. Adelaide, State History Centre, History Trust of South Australia in association with Adelaide City Council, 1996. ISBN 978-0-7308-0116-0, Susan Marston. Paul Stark. Patricia Sumerling, eds., Heritage of the City of Adelaide, An Illustrated Guide. Adelaide, Adelaide City Council, 1990, 1996. ISBN 978-0-909866-30-3, Derek Whitelock al., Adelaide, A Sense of Difference. Melbourne, Arcadia, 2000. ISBN 978-0-87560-657-6, external links, Adelaide City Council Official City Guide Access June 13, 2013. Adelaide City Council Access June 13, 2013. Government of South Australia Website Access June 13, 2013. Tourism Australia Adelaide Access June 13, 2013. Adelaide by Night Light, a photographic exhibition.